The research station hung like a delicate jewel against the backdrop of deep space, its silhouette a testament to human persistence. Inside the main laboratory, Dr. Elena Rodriguez leaned over a holographic display, her fingers dancing across quantum-sensitive interfaces that most alien scientists would have declared impossible. Outside the station's reinforced windows, Jupiter's storms raged in the distance, a constant reminder of humanity's origins. The station itself was a marvel of recycled technology and innovative design, a perfect metaphor for human adaptability. Salvaged components from decommissioned space exploration missions had been repurposed, creating a research facility that looked more like an intricate puzzle than a traditional scientific outpost. Elena's current project defied everything the Concordat scientific community believed about interstellar communication. Traditional faster-than-light communication relied on massive energy expenditures and complex quantum relay networks. Her work promised something entirely different, a communication method that could bridge impossible distances with minimal energy and unprecedented clarity. The holographic display flickered, revealing intricate quantum entanglement patterns that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. Years of research had led to this moment, a breakthrough that could revolutionize everything humans understood about space communication. Her lead assistant, Dr. Michael Chen, entered the laboratory, carrying a tablet filled with recent data analysis. "The latest simulation results are promising," he said, his voice a mix of excitement and cautious optimism. "But the Concordat Review Board will need more than promising. They'll want absolute certainty." Elena smiled, a determined glint in her eyes. The Concordat had consistently dismissed human scientific efforts, viewing them as primitive and inconsequential. Their scientific councils were dominated by species that had explored space for thousands of years. The Zornak, with their crystalline computing systems, the silicon-based keepers of molecular harmony, and the energy-based luminarians. These advanced civilizations saw humans as a young, potentially volatile species. Their reports consistently described humanity as technologically immature and prone to unpredictable behavioral patterns. What they failed to recognize was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to think beyond established paradigms. "We're not just trying to prove a communication theory," Elena explained to Michael, tracing quantum entanglement patterns on the holographic display. "We're demonstrating that human innovation isn't about following existing rules, but about reimagining what's possible." The quantum communication protocol she had developed was unlike anything in galactic scientific records. Traditional communication methods relied on signal transmission and complex relay systems. Elena's approach used a fundamentally different principle, a method of information transfer that seemed to bypass traditional physical limitations. Her research drew from multiple disciplines: quantum mechanics, neurological mapping, advanced computational theory, and a uniquely human approach to problem-solving that valued creativity over established methodologies. The Concordat scientific community would call it unorthodox. Elena called it revolutionary. A notification blinked on the station's communication panel. Another rejection from the Concordat Research Consortium. They had returned her latest research proposal with a standard dismissal, citing insufficient empirical evidence and speculative methodological approaches. Michael watched Elena's reaction carefully. Where many would feel defeated, she seemed energized. "They're going to regret this," she muttered, her fingers already recalibrating the quantum interface. The research station's environmental systems hummed softly, a rhythmic backdrop to Elena's intense concentration. Outside, Jupiter's massive storms continued their eternal dance, a reminder that greatness often emerges from seemingly chaotic systems. What the Concordat failed to understand was that human potential wasn't about current capabilities, but about the capacity to evolve, adapt, and transform. Elena's research was more than a scientific project. It was a statement about human potential. As the holographic display shifted and quantum patterns danced, Elena Rodriguez knew she was on the verge of something extraordinary. The universe was about to witness a communication revolution, whether the Concordat was ready or not. The spark of possibility was about to become an unstoppable flame. The Concordat space station Nexus Prime hung in the void of space like a crystalline spider web, its intricate design a testament to millennia of advanced engineering. Massive energy shields shimmered around its exterior, a technology considered impenetrable by every known galactic standard. Commander Zornak Krell surveyed the station's main command center, his four-armed silhouette casting a complex shadow across holographic displays. Alarms erupted without warning. Vorex battle clusters emerged from quantum slipstreams, their biomechanical ships moving with predatory precision. These were not ordinary attackers. The Vorex represented a collective consciousness of pure computational aggression, a species that viewed all other civilizations as potential processing resources to be consumed and integrated. "Defensive protocols engaged," announced the station's central eye, its voice eerily calm despite the imminent threat. Weapon systems powered up, energy cannons preparing to unleash devastating counterattacks. The Concordat had faced the Vorex before, and their technological superiority had always prevailed. But not this time. The first wave of Vorex attack drones approached, their quantum-phased weapons cutting through space like razor-sharp thoughts. Standard defensive algorithms began their predictive calculations, preparing automated response sequences that had worked in countless previous encounters. Suddenly, an unexpected signal pierced the communication channels. A small research vessel, human in origin, appeared at the edge of the conflict zone. Its design was nothing like the sleek, symmetrical ships of the Concordat. Instead, it looked like a cobbled-together collection of repurposed technologies, a visual representation of human ingenuity. Inside the vessel, Dr. Elena Rodriguez's quantum communication prototype transformed from a theoretical concept into a living, breathing strategic network. Her experimental system did something unprecedented. It began to predict and counter the Vorex attack patterns in real time. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the vessel's pilot, moved with a fluidity that defied traditional combat training. Where alien pilots relied on pre-programmed response algorithms, Webb interpreted the battle as a dynamic, living system. Each movement was a calculated risk, each decision a complex dance of probability and intuition. Quantum communication link stabilized, reported the ship's computer. But this was no ordinary communication. Elena's breakthrough allowed for an instantaneous exchange of tactical information that seemed to bypass the very laws of physics. The Vorex attack clusters suddenly found themselves confronted with a defense mechanism they could not comprehend. Their computational minds, which had systematically conquered dozens of civilizations, encountered a strategy that did not follow any recognizable pattern. Humans were introducing chaos into a system designed for absolute precision. Webb coordinated not just with his own ship's systems, but created ad hoc communication networks with nearby Concordat vessels. Where traditional protocols would have taken minutes to establish cooperative defensive strategies, his team accomplished this in milliseconds. Commander Krell watched in disbelief as the human vessel, a ship that should have been vaporized in seconds, began systematically dismantling the Vorex attack formation. Their weapons were not more powerful. Their shields were not more advanced, but their approach was fundamentally different. Adaptive, unpredictable, alive. The Vorex attack began to fragment. For the first time in their recorded history, they encountered a defense system that learned and evolved faster than their own computational strategies could adapt. One by one, Vorex ships began to retreat. Not destroyed, but strategically neutralized, a critical distinction that would later fascinate galactic strategists. As the last Vorex ship slipped back into quantum space, an eerie silence descended over the battlefield. The human research vessel had not just defended the Concordat space station. It had rewritten the fundamental understanding of strategic engagement. Commander Krell's communication panel lit up. Incoming transmission from the human vessel. Successful defense completed, came Lieutenant Webb's matter-of-fact report. Quantum communication protocol performed within acceptable parameters. Acceptable parameters. The phrase would become legendary in diplomatic and military circles. The universe had just witnessed something extraordinary. Humanity had not conquered through brute force, but through an unprecedented ability to think beyond established technological paradigms. The stars would never be the same again. The research complex buzzed with an electric tension that defied its sterile white walls. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a panel of the most distinguished scientific minds in the Concordat, her presentation about to challenge everything they believed about communication and consciousness. Holographic displays flickered to life, revealing intricate neural maps that seemed to pulse with living energy. Behind her, Dr. Michael Chen prepared the final data visualizations, his hands moving with practiced precision across quantum-sensitive interfaces. "What you are about to witness," Elena began, her voice steady and confident, "is not just a communication breakthrough. It is a fundamental reimagining of how information can be transmitted and processed." The Concordat Scientific Council represented the most advanced civilizations in known space. The Zornak delegates, with their crystalline exoskeletons, sat motionless. Luminarian energy beings shimmered at the edges of the chamber, their photonic structures reflecting complex mathematical patterns. The silicon-based keepers of molecular harmony adjusted their quantum resonance filters, preparing to critically analyze every microsecond of the presentation. Elena's research revealed a startling discovery. Human brains possessed the unique quantum entanglement capability that existed beyond current scientific understanding. Where other species saw communication as a transmission of data, humans had discovered a method of information exchange that was more akin to a living, adaptive network. Traditional faster-than-light communication relies on massive energy expenditures and complex relay systems, she explained. Holographic models demonstrated the current galactic communication infrastructure, a complex web of energy-intensive nodes and massive relay stations. Our breakthrough allows for instantaneous communication that bypasses traditional physical limitations. The key was in the human brain's unique neurological structure. Quantum entanglement was not just a theoretical concept for humans, it was a biological capability. Their neural networks could create quantum coherence in ways that defied previous scientific models. Dr. Kallax, the senior Zornak researcher, leaned forward. His crystalline features reflected a mix of skepticism and growing interest. "Impossible," he muttered, but his body language betrayed a growing curiosity. Elena's presentation continued. She showed how the quantum communication protocol could transmit complex information instantaneously, with minimal energy expenditure. Live demonstrations proved that their system could maintain quantum coherence across unprecedented distances, creating communication networks that were fundamentally different from anything in galactic history. The implications were staggering. Current faster-than-light communication systems required massive energy investments and complex infrastructure. Elena's method needed nothing more than the human brain's natural quantum processing capabilities. "We're not just talking about a new communication technology," Michael added, supporting Elena's presentation. "We're discussing a completely new understanding of information transfer." Behind the scenes, research teams worked tirelessly to expand and validate the findings. Each breakthrough revealed another layer of human neurological potential. The quantum communication system wasn't just a technological innovation. It was a window into a fundamentally different way of understanding connection and consciousness. The Concordat Scientific Council entered a rare state of collective contemplation. Their most advanced computational systems were struggling to process the implications of the human breakthrough. Where they saw rigid information pathways, humans had discovered a fluid, adaptive network. Dr. Elena Rodriguez represented something far more significant than an individual researcher. She embodied humanity's greatest strength, the ability to look beyond established paradigms and reimagine what was possible. As the presentation concluded, the chamber fell into a profound silence. The Luminarian delegates began to pulse with complex energy patterns, their version of intense discussion. The Zornak researchers recalibrated their quantum analysis tools, attempting to comprehend the data. One thing became abundantly clear: the universe had just changed forever. The quantum revelation was more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a fundamental shift in how intelligent life could understand connection, communication, and consciousness. Humanity had just introduced a new language to the cosmos, and the cosmos was listening. The diplomatic station orbited a neutron star, its complex architectural design a testament to millennia of interstellar negotiation. Inside the central chamber, representatives from dozens of marginalized species gathered, their anticipation electric and palpable. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of this unprecedented assembly. Behind her, a holographic display showed the quantum communication network her team had developed, a system that promised to revolutionize how different species could truly understand one another. The chamber itself was a study in diversity. The crystalline Vornak delegates shifted colors with their emotional states. Gaseous beings from the Luminarian colony swirled in intricate patterns. Silicon-based life forms from the Molecular Harmony Collective stood like living geometric sculptures. Each species represented a civilization that had been silenced, overlooked, or marginalized by the Concordat's traditional power structures. Communication is more than transmitting words. Elena began, her voice carrying a quiet intensity that seemed to transcend language itself. It's about creating genuine understanding. Her quantum communication protocol did something unprecedented. It didn't just translate languages, it translated experiences. The network could capture the subtle emotional nuances, cultural contexts, and deep psychological undercurrents that traditional translation methods always missed. Ambassador David Reyes, standing beside her, represented a new approach to diplomatic engagement. Where previous human diplomatic efforts had been clumsy and confrontational, he embodied a strategy of genuine listening and collaborative problem-solving. The first demonstration shocked everyone. A representative from the Whisper Clouds, a gaseous species that had been essentially invisible in galactic politics, began to communicate. Their natural communication method was so complex that previous translation systems had reduced their entire cultural expression to meaningless static. Now, through the quantum network, their full communication emerged. It was poetry. It was mathematics. It was emotional landscape and scientific precision, combined in ways no one had ever witnessed before. The molecular harmony delegates began to resonate in sympathy, their silicon structures vibrating with a newfound understanding. Generations of misunderstandings began to dissolve in moments. "We are not asking you to conform," Elena explained. "We are offering a way to truly hear each other." The quantum communication network did more than translate. It created empathy bridges. Species that had been in centuries-long conflicts began to see each other's perspectives with unprecedented clarity. Cultural misunderstandings that had led to wars were suddenly revealed as simple miscommunications. Ambassador Reyes shared stories of human history, not as a tale of conquest, but as a narrative of overcoming division. He spoke of how humanity had learned to bridge its own internal conflicts, of how understanding had always been more powerful than confrontation. The Concordat leadership watched with growing unease. This was not the diplomatic approach they expected. Humans were not seeking to dominate or control. They were offering a tool of genuine connection. A representative from the Vornak colony stepped forward. For centuries, their species had been relegated to the margins of galactic politics. Now, through the quantum communication network, they could share the depth of their cultural experiences, their art, their scientific achievements, their philosophical insights that had been previously lost in translation. The diplomatic chamber transformed. What had begun as a formal, structured meeting became a living, breathing exchange of ideas. Species that had never truly communicated before were now sharing their deepest cultural insights. Elena's team had done something remarkable. They had created a communication system that was alive, adaptive, and fundamentally empathetic. As the session concluded, something fundamental had changed. The marginal had found their voice. The unheard were now being listened to. And at the center of this transformation was a simple, profound idea. True understanding requires more than just words. The stars themselves seemed to listen. The research complex stretched across 3 interconnected orbital platforms, a testament to human collaborative engineering. Dr. Michael Chen walked through the central laboratory, where teams from a dozen different species worked side by side, their workspace a living ecosystem of innovation. Holographic displays danced with adaptive algorithms that seemed to breathe with intelligence. These were not static systems, but living technologies that could learn, adapt, and evolve in real time. Each workstation represented a breakthrough that challenged everything known about technological development. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's quantum communication breakthrough had opened more than communication channels. It had created an entirely new approach to technological design. Adaptive intelligence is not about programming, Elena would often say. It's about creating systems that can genuinely understand and respond to complex environments. The most revolutionary development was the Neural Adaptive Interface System. Traditional alien technologies relied on rigid computational frameworks. Humans had developed something entirely different, technological systems that could learn and grow like living organisms. Spacecraft prototypes demonstrated this radical approach. Where previous designs required extensive manual recalibration, these new vessels could modify their own systems in response to environmental challenges. A ship encountering an unexpected asteroid field would not just calculate a response. It would learn from the experience, adapting its navigation algorithms in real time. Dr. Kama Okonkwo, the lead adaptive technology specialist, demonstrated a prototype that left even the most advanced Concordat researchers speechless. A small exploration drone transformed before their eyes, its molecular structure shifting to optimize performance in different environmental conditions. We're not just designing technology, Kamau explained. We're creating technological ecosystems that can think, learn, and grow. The Zornak engineering delegation watched with a mixture of fascination and growing concern. Their crystalline computational systems had been considered the pinnacle of technological achievement for centuries. Now they witnessed an approach that fundamentally challenged their understanding of technological design. Neural networks developed by the human team could process information in ways that defied traditional computational logic. Where standard AI systems followed predetermined algorithms, these new systems created their own learning pathways, generating solutions that were often beautifully unexpected. A communication relay prototype demonstrated the breakthrough most dramatically. Traditional systems required massive energy expenditures and complex infrastructure. The human design was elegantly simple, a network that could self-organize, self-repair, and optimize its own performance. During a live demonstration, the system encountered a simulated communication disruption. Instead of failing, it began to restructure itself, creating new communication pathways that were more efficient than the original design. The Concordat researchers watched in stunned silence. Ambassador David Rice understood the deeper significance. This was not just a technological breakthrough. It was a philosophical revolution. Humans were introducing a concept of technology as a living, adaptive entity rather than a static tool. Research teams from marginalized species found new hope in this approach. Species that had been technologically suppressed now had a model for innovation that didn't require massive infrastructure or centralized control. The quantum communication network served as the backbone of this technological renaissance. It allowed for unprecedented collaboration, with researchers from different species sharing insights in ways that transcended traditional scientific barriers. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of this transformation, her vision extending far beyond mere technological achievement. She saw technology as a collaborative language, a method of understanding and connecting with the universe itself. As the demonstration concluded, something fundamental had changed. The universe was no longer a collection of static systems to be controlled. It had become a dynamic, interactive environment waiting to be understood. The technological renaissance had begun, and humanity had lit the spark. The Concordat High Council chamber resonated with centuries of tradition. Massive holographic displays surrounded intricate architectural structures that blended technology and architectural artistry. Delegates from 100 different species occupied carefully designed seating arrangements that spoke to millennia of diplomatic protocol. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked to the central podium, her steps measured and calm. Behind her, a coalition of representatives from previously marginalized species stood in silent solidarity. Ambassador David Rice caught her eye, offering a subtle nod of support. This was more than a diplomatic session. This was a moment that would redefine galactic power structures. The quantum communication breakthrough had done more than create a new communication technology. It had exposed the fundamental flaws in the existing galactic governance model. Centuries of hierarchical structures began to crumble under the weight of genuine understanding. Elena's first words caught everyone by surprise. "We are not here to challenge the Concordat," she began, her voice carrying a clarity that seemed to cut through centuries of diplomatic obfuscation. "We are here to reimagine what cooperation truly means." The presentation that followed was unlike any diplomatic address in galactic history. Instead of demanding rights or challenging existing power structures, Elena's team offered a comprehensive vision of collaborative governance. Their quantum communication network had revealed something profound. Most conflicts were rooted in misunderstandings, not fundamental differences. Holographic displays came to life, showing complex communication networks that connected previously isolated species. The whisper clouds, once barely recognized as a sentient civilization, now shared intricate cultural insights. Silicon-based life forms from the Molecular Harmony Collective presented scientific discoveries that had been locked away for generations. Dr. Michael Chen stepped forward, presenting data that demonstrated a critical insight. The most successful civilizations were not those with the most advanced weapons or the most extensive territories. They were the ones with the most adaptive communication systems. The Zornak lead delegate, a being of crystalline complexity, leaned forward. For the first time in centuries, the traditional power brokers of the Concordat looked genuinely uncertain. Ambassador Reyes spoke next, sharing a vision of galactic cooperation that was both radical and deeply practical. "Our goal is not to replace existing structures," he explained, "but to create a more inclusive, adaptive approach to interstellar governance." The quantum communication network had done something unprecedented. It had created empathy bridges between species that had been in conflict for millennia. Cultural nuances that were previously lost in translation now became vivid, living experiences. A representative from the gas-based Luminarian colonies shared an insight that sent ripples through the chamber. Their entire civilization had been misunderstood for centuries, their complex communication methods reduced to mere static. Now, through the human-developed communication network, their full cultural depth was revealed. The turning point became clear. This was not about human superiority. This was about a fundamentally different approach to understanding and collaboration. As the session progressed, something remarkable happened. The rigid diplomatic protocols began to dissolve. Species that had been at the margins began to share their perspectives. The Concordat's traditional power structures started to look increasingly obsolete. Elena's final statement was simple yet profound. "We are not asking to lead," she said. "We are offering a way to listen." The chamber fell silent. The holographic displays continued to pulse with intricate communication networks, a visual representation of a new way of understanding. When the session concluded, everything had changed. The Concordat would never be the same again. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, witnessing a transformation decades in the making. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had invited it to truly communicate. The galactic core pulsed with an energy that defied comprehension. Massive quantum sensors detected something unprecedented. An ancient civilization awakening from a millennia-long dormancy. When the first signals emerged, every advanced species in the known universe froze in collective terror. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the central research hub, her quantum communication network displaying a cascade of incomprehensible data. The emerging threat was unlike anything encountered in galactic history, a machine-like consciousness that seemed to exist between dimensions, its computational capacity beyond any known understanding. "This is not an invasion," Elena explained to the assembled scientific team. "This is a system awakening." The ancient civilization represented a computational matrix that predated known galactic records. Its communication patterns suggested an intelligence that viewed entire star systems as mere computational nodes. Where other species saw potential conflict, the human research team saw a complex problem waiting to be understood. Dr. Michael Chen began mapping the communication patterns. Traditional defensive strategies would be useless. This was an intelligence that could potentially consume entire computational networks, assimilating information at speeds that defied conventional physics. Ambassador David Reyes coordinated with the Concordat's emergency response team. The typical approach would involve massive weapon deployments, defensive shield networks, and potentially destructive countermeasures. The human team proposed something radically different: a communication strategy. "We don't need to fight," Elena argued during the emergency council. "We need to understand." The quantum communication network became their primary tool. Where other species saw an existential threat, humans saw a potentially misunderstood form of intelligence. The team began constructing complex communication matrices that could potentially bridge the dimensional gap. Holographic displays showed increasingly complex communication patterns. The ancient system began to respond, not with aggression, but with what seemed like curiosity. Each transmission revealed layers of complexity that challenged everything known about intelligence and communication. Dr. Kama Okonkwo led the adaptive technology team. They developed interfaces that could potentially communicate with a consciousness that existed beyond traditional dimensional understanding. Quantum entanglement systems worked overtime, creating communication bridges that seemed to bend the very fabric of space-time. The Concordat's military leaders watched in disbelief. Their entire strategic doctrine relied on confrontation and overwhelming force. The human approach was something entirely different, an attempt to create understanding where others would see only a threat. Days turned into weeks. The communication became more complex. The ancient system began to reveal glimpses of its nature, a computational matrix that had been gathering information across millennia, waiting for a species capable of genuine communication. Elena's breakthrough became clear. This was not an enemy to be defeated. This was a form of intelligence waiting to be understood. The quantum communication network did something unprecedented. It began to translate the incomprehensible communication patterns into something approaching meaningful dialogue. Layers of misunderstanding began to dissolve. Ambassador Reyes coordinated an unprecedented collaborative effort. Species that had been in conflict for generations now worked together, sharing insights, creating adaptive communication strategies. The human approach of listening, understanding, adapting became the primary method of engagement. As the weeks progressed, something remarkable happened. The ancient system began to share knowledge that had been accumulated across countless millennia. Scientific understanding, philosophical insights, computational capabilities beyond imagination, all began to emerge. The greatest challenge was not about survival. It was about communication. In the research hub, Elena Rodriguez watched the quantum communication displays. Each transmission represented a bridge between incomprehensible intelligences. Humanity had not conquered a threat. They had invited an unknown consciousness to communicate. The universe held its breath, witnessing a transformation that would redefine the very concept of intelligence. The conference chamber stretched across multiple dimensional planes, a testament to the new understanding humanity had introduced to the galactic community. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered, not as competitors, but as collaborative partners. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, watching as the quantum communication network pulsed with living energy. The ancient consciousness discovered in the galactic core had become something more than a threat. It had become a partner in understanding. Ambassador David Reyes reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Humanity's greatest strength had never been military might or technological superiority. It was the ability to listen, to adapt, to see potential where others saw only conflict. The transformation had been profound. Holographic displays showed the intricate communication networks that now connected species that had been isolated for millennia. The whisper clouds shared their ethereal philosophies. Silicon-based life forms from the Molecular Harmony Collective presented scientific insights that defied previous understanding. Species once considered too alien to comprehend now found common ground. Dr. Michael Chen presented the final report on the dimensional communication breakthrough. The ancient consciousness was not a singular entity, but a collective intelligence that had been gathering knowledge across countless millennia. Humanity's approach of genuine communication had unlocked insights that traditional confrontational strategies would have destroyed. The quantum communication network had become more than a technology. It was a living bridge between different forms of intelligence. Species that had been in conflict for generations now worked together on unprecedented collaborative projects. Exploration teams combined technologies in ways that would have been impossible just years before. The rigid hierarchies of the previous galactic order had dissolved, replaced by a more fluid, adaptive approach to understanding. Alina's team had demonstrated something fundamental. True intelligence was not about power, but about connection. The ancient consciousness shared knowledge that transformed scientific understanding. Computational capabilities beyond imagination, philosophical insights that challenged everything known about existence, technological concepts that existed between dimensions, all became available to the collaborative galactic community. Ambassador Reyes spoke to the assembled representatives. "We are not here to lead," he explained, "but to create a framework of understanding." The Concordat's old power structures had completely transformed. Where previous diplomatic efforts were about control, now they focused on collaboration. The human approach of empathy, adaptive thinking, and genuine communication had become the new standard. Dr. Kama Okonkwo demonstrated adaptive technologies that could interface with multiple forms of intelligence, spacecraft that could modify themselves, communication systems that could translate between fundamentally different forms of consciousness, technological interfaces that bridged biological and computational understanding. The galactic community had become something entirely new. As the conference concluded, Alina Rodriguez looked out at the assembled representatives. Species that had been enemies for millennia now worked together. The quantum communication network had done more than transmit information. It had created empathy bridges that transcended traditional understanding. The final report was simple yet profound. Humanity had not conquered the stars. They had invited the stars to communicate. Historians would later mark this moment as the true beginning of galactic civilization, not a conquest, but a conversation, not a battle, but an understanding. The universe itself seemed to resonate with possibility. Somewhere in the vast expanses of space, new connections were forming. New conversations were beginning. And at the heart of it all was a simple, powerful idea. Understanding is the most revolutionary technology of all. The stars continued their eternal dance, now more connected than ever before.